Good afternoon, everyone. We'll come to order. And first off, apologies for the late start. You may have heard that there were votes in the House, and we've all been held up there. But we'll get right underway. And welcome also to the folks in the gallery. Happy to have everyone here. We are meeting today on traditional Algonquin land, for which we're very grateful. And we have two panels today. The first panel for the first half of the meeting are appearing as individuals: Rod McCormick, professor and research chair at Thompson Rivers University, and Michael DeGagne. Welcome to you both. Because of our late start, we're starting about 20 minutes late. We were compelled to finish at the usual time of 5:30, so we'll be having each panel for 50 minutes instead of 60 minutes. We'll share the 20-minute loss between the two panels that we have this afternoon. It just means there might be one or two fewer questions after you, but you'll have your full allotment of time. So, and we're doing 10 minutes in total.
Each.
10 minutes each.
Yeah.
So I welcome, in any order you would like to speak, you each will have the floor for 10 minutes, and
Sure.
I yield the floor to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Go ahead and start. Great. Members of Parliament, observers, colleagues, it's an honor to appear before your committee on the unceded territory of Algonquin peoples, and I'd like to commend the dedication of members of this committee, and thank you for the important work you're doing on behalf of all my relations. Nyawa. My name's Dr. Rod McCormick. I'm a member of the Mohawk Nation, Kanien'kehá:ka. I work as a full prof and BC government endowed research chair in Aboriginal health at Thompson Rivers University. Before moving back to my partner's home on Kamloops Indian Reserve, I was a psychologist and counseling psych professor at University of BC for 18 years. I've also been a psychotherapist and clinical consultant supervisor for the last 27 years. Because of the limited time available, I'll contain my comments to two of the objectives of your study: factors contributing to elevated risks of suicide. I'd like to just focus on one method of assimilation colonization used by Canada, which was intended to separate Indigenous peoples from primary sources of meaning and strength. I believe that this disconnection is one of the greatest factors contributing to the elevated risks. A theoretical explanation can be found in logotherapy, developed by Viktor Frankl, a Jewish psychiatrist who survived the extermination camps of Nazi Germany. Frankl found that individuals and cultures can survive if they have a strong reason for living, which can be found in sources of meaning such as spirituality, work, significant relationships, contributing to your culture, etc. Through colonization, our experience has been one of disconnection from those sources of meaning. Disconnection from family, obviously 120 years of residential school, separated Aboriginal children from their parents. Examples: my children's kia'a, or grandma, who attended the Kamloops residential school from the ages of 5 to 18 years of age. Disconnection from communities. Communities were relocated to reserves and often relocated once again when the government chose to do so. Communities have also been split by various means, such as forced replacement of traditional community leadership with elections imposed by Indian affairs, etc. Disconnection from culture. Cultural practices were often banned or prohibited, such as the potlatch law, the Sundance ceremony, punishments for speaking your language in residential school. Disconnection from spirituality. Every effort was made to replace traditional spirituality with Christianity. And disconnection from the land. The government had a policy to relocate Aboriginal peoples to urban settings when possible to speed up assimilation. I'll just mention a couple other contributing factors. One this panel has already heard about, and that is that suicide has been normalized. The predominant community gathering for most communities has become the funeral. As one colleague said, we're becoming a culture of death. We've also become disempowered to the point that we are no longer response-able, i.e. able to respond to crises. And another point I'll just mention is the government still doesn't understand an Indigenous worldview. The government uses mechanistic worldview in dealing with Indigenous peoples. So the idea is one can create change using drivers and levers and determinants, etc. Now I'll talk about protective factors that help to reduce the vulnerability. My research with Indigenous peoples reveals that one of the paths to healing is reconnecting to those sources of meaning we've been disconnected from. So reconnection with family, community, culture, nature, the land, and spirituality. In addition to reconnection, a meta-analysis of my 25 years of research and practice regarding healing with Indigenous peoples indicates that healing leads to one or more of the following: empowerment, cleansing, balance, discipline or responsibility, and of course, connection and belonging. Just going back to that mechanistic worldview example, I thought I'd explain by means of one of our newspapers, the National Indigenous newspaper, Windspeaker, wrote up a presentation I gave a few years ago with the headline, "Consultant tells Health Canada, stop pushing. We are pulled towards healing, not pushed. Causes push, reasons pull." Another headline, "Get out of the way, let Aboriginal people get on with health." McCormick was highly critical of Health Canada's approach for Aboriginal long-term health planning and the department's use of mechanistic language. Health Canada has been in the business of pushing, and we are instinctively pulled towards reasons for living a good and healthy life, and it's not instinctive to be pushed. When we're pushed, we tend to be resistant, and that resistance can sometimes end up in self-destructive behavior. He believes Health Canada has to remove the barriers, which he noted included such factors as lack of access, lack of culturally appropriate programming, jurisdictional issues, short-term funding, which will then enable Indigenous people to instinctively seek healing through traditional and cultural means. I'll give you one example of my research, and it's published in the Routledge International Handbook of Clinical Suicide Research, and that is a chapter, in their own words, a retrospective exploratory study of how to facilitate healing for suicidal Indigenous youth. By means of interviewing 25 First Nations participants who recovered from being suicidal, they provided examples of their own experiences in healing by describing what was done and what action was taken to facilitate healing for them. So if we look at the categories that facilitate healing and recovery for suicidal First Nations youth in descending order of significance, I'll just read the top 10 here. Self-esteem, self-acceptance, obtaining help from others, changing thinking, connection with culture, tradition, responsibility to others, expressing emotions and cleansing, future goals and hope, spiritual connection, learning from others, role models, and connection to nature. The study indicates that there is an abundance of potential healing resources that exist for Indigenous youth who are suicidal. And it also has the potential to reorient the way Indigenous communities and practitioners view the nature and source of mental health services provided to them. In recognizing that the natural healing resources of youth themselves can be effective sources of healing, Indigenous community leaders may feel empowered to start examining ways to utilize these methods of healing in addressing youth suicide in their communities. Given that 13 of the 22 categories involve cultural spiritual practices, the results of the study suggest that it is necessary to understand the belief systems and worldviews of Indigenous cultures before applying theories and techniques of healing. Some of the other factors, just to finish up here, the idea is that we need to ask the real experts. Like I did with this study, I believe communities must find out what works to prevent suicide by asking those who have recovered from being suicidal, because it's important to acknowledge the coping healing resources that exist within the individual, the community, and the culture. Obviously, we could develop training programs to cover off those 22 categories, such as that deal with positive self-esteem, self-awareness, emotional literacy, cultural identity, communication skills, and life skills such as problem solving, decision-making, values clarification, relationship skills, and stress management. I think another witness said we have to ensure that our youth have the necessary skills to succeed. Just like to touch on unresolved grief and trauma, we need programs such as those formerly offered by the Aboriginal Healing Foundation that can provide healing resources and programs to deal with unresolved grief and trauma. As well, the video conferencing capabilities, I don't believe, at least in BC, are being utilized for mental health. There are some logistical safety issues regarding therapy, But until they are worked out, the facilities could be used to provide support, supervision, training, and consultation to community workers. A 24-hour consultation line, for instance, could be developed for workers, such as community health nurses, who could consult, debrief with the senior mental health professional. Use of ceremony. Many Indigenous communities have historically held community events and ceremonies that assist youth in reinforcing their personal and cultural identity and their connection to the community and culture, such as the naming ceremony. The slow transformation in Indigenous health research, wearing my other hat, is a good metaphor to use with regards to Indigenous healing. In the beginning, research was done on us. We were the guinea pigs. Then for us, as we hired researchers for things like land claims, etc. Then with us, as research ethical guidelines required meaningful partnership. And eventually research will be done by us. This transformation will require an investment in capacity building. Last thing I just mentioned is I'm developing a center called All My Relations, and it will be a new research and training center to help Indigenous communities to identify and in many ways reclaim traditional healing resources such as the naming ceremony I mentioned. It is hoped that there will be a lateral exchange of these healing approaches between Indigenous communities and training in the use of such approaches if requested. So I'll stop at that. Nyawa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. McCormick, for that. Very well timed. Appreciate it. I was remiss not to mention the card system. We didn't need them in this case, but moving forward, yellow means 1 minute remaining, and red means please do finish up. Mr. Degagne, please, you have the floor for 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the welcome to Territory and for your important work. I'm here today to offer a few remarks and answer questions about, first of all, my work as the president of Nipissing University here in Ontario. I'm a First Nations person from northwestern Ontario, but I'm going to speak specifically to 15 years of work at the Aboriginal Healing Foundation, which preceded my work at the university. So the Aboriginal Healing Foundation was a system, or it was a structural response to a very serious problem in First Nations. So I think you can draw parallels and analogies to the work that you're doing here. We were set up to address the legacy of physical and sexual abuse in residential schools, and we were provided with an endowment from the federal government that provided us a number of advantages, not the least of which that we were allowed to invest that endowment and stretch that money for, at the end of the day, it was 17 years. We began in 1998. We did both funding and research. So led by a board of directors of 17 Aboriginal citizens from across the country, we provided funding to 1,300 community projects that were residential school specific. We were also responsible to monitor those projects, to ensure that money was used wisely, the healing outcomes were achieved, and we supplemented that with $50 million in research over the course of the life of the foundation. So $50 million in research in health, healing, reconciliation. There was a suicide project, etc. So I would say 30 pieces of research conducted across the country, and at the end of the day, publishing that research to ensure that it has a widespread use and uptake. As a mechanism for delivering or for addressing a very serious problem, like the one you're facing here, it had several strengths, not the least of which was that it had a national Aboriginal board. So it brought together perspectives from across the country. Secondly, we sustained funding from an endowment. And you heard Dr. McCormick reference that non-short-term funding. I cannot say enough about the power of sustained funding. The idea that a project that is working in a small community that has very little else to sustain it doesn't have to shut down for months at a time while funding applications weave their way through bureaucracies, and that there's a consistency in the individuals who are working in these projects and a capacity to develop greater and greater skills as time goes on. So the foundation, it doesn't sound like a long time, but some projects that were funded by the foundation were funded for up to 10 years 10 consecutive years. And the human resource capacity that was developed to address serious health issues in that time was quite remarkable. Let me get into some of the community strengths. So first, we supported capacity from the foundation. We supported capacity for some and capacity development for others. It's an important distinction and one that's actually very rare. Often what happens is that capacity is developed or that funding programs are developed that funds everyone equally, so that everyone is either equally happy or equally disappointed, depending on how you look at it. So this formula funding that's rolled out often means that communities with tremendous amount of capacity and capability are underfunded, and those that have very little in the way of capacity to deal with health are funded for something that they have no ability to deliver. And we see this happen across funding in the Aboriginal community. So we focused on communities that had the capacity to deliver in-community programs. These programs were of their own design. They were a wide variety of counseling services, land-based programs, elder-driven programs, but it depended on what the community was prepared to offer. Surprisingly, many communities found a way to blend traditional practices with Western practices. So this was not a knee-jerk reaction to return to traditional means of delivering counseling services. You often found a blend. Communities used the tools that were available to them to best effect. In terms of addressing suicide, we have I wanted to supplement Dr. McCormick's position on the historic transmission of trauma. The notion that we are left with, sometimes we often say, well, a lot of the suicide that we see today had its genesis in residential school programs many decades ago. This is a very difficult idea for us to get our head around, the idea that something that could have happened decades ago might affect our behavior today. But we have some interesting, I think robust evidence that's coming out of places. Amy Bombay and her colleagues at Carleton University have shown how health outcomes for successive generations who did not attend residential schools but are descended from Aboriginal people who attended residential schools, those successive generations, their health outcomes are negatively affected by the fact that they come from a family of residential school survivors. I think this is something that we really have to focus on. So let me offer in the next minute or two here just a few notions of what I would recommend in terms of a response, a national response to suicide, Aboriginal suicide. I think first that however we find the mechanism, that a sustained funding presence is absolutely critical. For those of you who have spent time discussing a variety of issues in the Aboriginal community, you know the problems that we have with funding applications that begin at the beginning of a fiscal year. People often don't see money until halfway through. They have a rush to spend it in 6 months, and it reconvenes again at the end of the fiscal year when they apply again. So what you have is spasms of activity that are not consistent within the community. And I cannot say enough about the importance of a sustained funding presence for programs that address suicide. I think the second recommendation I would make is the review and use of existing consultations. There are some very rich consultations that have occurred across the country. I think NAN alone, the NAN territory, has been consulted several times on the issue of Aboriginal suicide. And I know many of you have been active in that area as well. I don't know that we need more consultation on this. I think what we can do is take a good hard look at the consultation that's already gone on and review the directions that have been set already. There's great research. There's great consultations that already exist. My third recommendation would be that we tend towards community-developed programs, and in communities that have a track record of capacity in these areas. So allowing the community to develop its own programs and then working with that community to offer sustained funding. My concluding remark would be, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention something about the importance of universities in all this, that university-led programs that combine counseling, Western and traditional counseling, are emerging. And I think they hold real promise, especially for northern communities. Too often we see southern-trained or Western-trained psychologists, psychiatrists that go into Aboriginal communities. They have no intention of a sustained presence. They leave not long after many wounds have been opened. And what we're looking at is for people who have been trained locally and can work locally in an ongoing way. So those are my recommendations, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to address this group. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. DeGagne and Dr. McCormick, for your remarks. Very grateful for those. We'll move right into a round of 7-minute questions. Members will have 7 minutes for both the question and the response. And as always, I'll try to urge members to get to the point of their question as soon as possible so we can hear more from you. And the same approach with the cards we'll do for timing. The first question is coming from Mike Bossio, please.
To speak to that sustained long-term stable funding, so from 98 to 2014, you received $350 million in funding that you're able to expand through other means, I assume, to $536 million that went to 1,345 communities. Why did it end?
The government at the time was under no obligation to continue us. Okay. And so we had been extended twice, okay, with small amounts of money. So we originally received $350 million endowment up front in the trust of our national board. We were discontinued because there was a sense, as it was explained to us, that there was no sense that we would continue on indefinitely.
How many people did you have working for you? How many counselors?
Well, we would have had hundreds of them in the 1,300 programs that we funded over the course of that time. So many hundreds of people either arrived at community projects and worked for them or were trained on the job in community programs.
So you were able to, at the end of this, you had locally trained counselors that could counsel individuals on healing practices for Indigenous peoples in 1,345 different communities?
Yes.
Okay. There's been many times raised in this committee about long-term stable funding, about self-government for Indigenous peoples to allow them to establish their own priorities. Do you really see that they have to go hand in hand?
Yeah, I do. I think you've got to have long-term sustained funding and the idea that to help people develop capacities to keep going, right? I mean, the Healing Foundation was provided with an additional endowment. From that endowment, we funded all future operations and a $50 million research agenda based on interest alone. So if you have the right group, and you have the right funding profile, you can provide funding and leave people alone to manage their own affairs, generate their own capital so that they can sustain themselves and obviously make a huge impact in the community.
Would you agree, Dr. McCormick?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's a shame that you couldn't have just operated off the investments. I don't think government works that way. It's
process, right?
Yeah, set funding for 5 years or whatever. I worked for some of those projects, some of the long-term ones, and saw tremendous capacity being developed. And then it was all gone. It dispersed. The elders were trained to work with the healing programs. The things just seemed to. Without the continued funding, the things fell apart, and it was really bad timing. It was right at the beginning of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So, I mean, it didn't logically make any sense to take away the mental health programs and supports when you're starting this huge, process to get people to talk about their past hurts and so on.
So, do you think that it is, from a self-government standpoint, I know it's not a one-size-fits-all. I think that's become very clear in our testimony so far. But is it possible to do it reserve by reserve, or should it be like the model we have now, provincially, municipally, county? Do we have a nation? Mohawk Nation, which I have the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte in my riding, at a nation level providing a certain level of service, like the provincials would, and fund that in that type of degree, and then at a local level have your municipal council-led reserves that would receive different funding?
Possibly. I think there were all kinds of variations under the Healing Foundation. Some were run by tribal councils quite effectively, others just small communities. I think the idea is that the community has to feel empowered to, as I said, response able, to be able to take on that responsibility. I was a fly-in psychologist for Health Canada for 10 years, and that certainly wasn't empowering nor very effective, I'll have to confess, in terms of addressing mental health needs.
So I have, in the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte, they have a number of youth counselors that are there. One that is a close friend of mine, and he has weekends where there's youth that he finds that are kind of heading in that direction towards trouble. He will have weekends with them where he takes them back to the land, right? He calls them back to the land. And they spend a weekend and they camp out in the land and they have a fire, and all cell phones, all that electronic stuff is gone. And it's just he and the youth, and there might be a couple of them around the campfire, and they're just talking about what's bothering them, or what's making them angry, or or the issues that they're struggling with, And then I had the fortune of going to Haida Gwaii and meeting with the watchman in Haida Gwaii, and Stephen Nita has come to our environment committee, and I've met with him and talked about the rangers, and I've met with Valerie Courtois, who is leading the charge on the Guardians front. This whole notion of getting Indigenous peoples back to the land. Do you see this as once again, we need long-term stable funding in order to bring these types of programs, long-term programs, to Indigenous peoples because of the positive benefit it provides?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think certainly the proof is that many of when a community is left to its own devices to design its own programs, that's often the road they take, the idea of going back to the land and going back to traditions. And I don't know if Dr. Kermeyer will be here, but he's talking more and more about the idea that the traditional supports for mental health, going back to the land.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. The next question is from Kathy McLeod, please.
Thank you to both the witnesses, and I want to note that Dr. McCormick's from Thompson Rivers University, which we're both very proud of in the riding of Kamloops Thompson Caribou. So I guess there's a whole number of things that have sort of piqued my interest in terms of pursuing further, to some degree in response to I would say it's been a crisis forever, but a crisis that's been very profound lately. The Health Canada created SWAT teams to kind of go in, and what I'm hearing is that, probably that's not going to be all that effective. Is that, an accurate sort of, how is that going to help in terms of the response from, your knowledge and the research that you've done versus what some other sort of short-term crisis responses might be?
Want me to answer first? I would say you're right. Initially, to contain things, it's a good idea, but that SWAT team or whatever, mental crisis team, is going to leave eventually, and that's not going to solve any problems. It might contain if there's a suicide, if there's fear of contagion and so on, but it's not a long-term solution. And I know the government's invested heavily just recently in the mental wellness teams, which hold more potential because they, if there are enough of them, But the idea there is you've got a sustainable, community-based sort of team that can provide this ongoing support. The difficulty is we've got 600 and some First Nations alone, then there's the Métis communities, Inuit communities, and so one team is never going to have the local knowledge. At best, I think there were about a dozen that were based on already existing sorts of community projects that were pretty successful based on the evaluation I read. But again, they struggled with human resources, how to maintain those workers who, some that didn't have much training, once they had it, they went and found better jobs, full-time jobs, and then others, the burnout that occurs. So logistically, I just can't see bringing in outside people, and no matter how many teams you have, they're never going to have local knowledge, because at best they're going to be representing 10 different communities or trying to provide services to 10 or 20, whatever the math is. And I just can't see how it's going to work. The needs from community to community vary so much.
And could you quickly, from your research, I mean, I know that there's been, I think, probably a lot of sort of time and energy over a lot of years. Are we having any impact on rates? So for all the sort of different sort of programs and supports, have we done anything that's helping?
As far as
in terms of rates,
go ahead.
Well, I mean, I don't know that we've had a tremendous impact. I mean, we're still talking about it significantly. And if we look at the Royal Commission 25 years ago, right, where we were talking, or 20 years ago, we were talking then about the urgent need to train 10,000 new, community-based health workers, and we haven't achieved that yet. So it was an urgent need 2 decades ago, and the rates may have fallen in some parts of the country, but we still have a desperate need for locally trained people with, local knowledge that will sustain a presence in communities.
So I hopefully have a quick, so you both represent or related to universities, and, certainly I know that there's a large Indigenous population at Thompson Rivers, and I would presume at Nipissing. And we also know that we have young people that are perhaps fragile and vulnerable. So have your universities got specific program support services that, are proactively looking at this issue, and are they being effective?
Yeah, well, universities are very good now at making sure that there are all sorts of programs and services available for incoming Aboriginal students. This is something that we've developed over probably the last 10, 15 years. So we've got bridging programs, mental health supports. We have opportunities for students to arrive early, be acclimatized to the university, and then a lot of follow-up, full-time Aboriginal support people, usually housed in some sort of Indigenous student center. So we do a good job at it now, but we have the advantage of knowing that there'll be more students next year, and we can sustain our presence year after year.
I think the best intervention has been peer support programs, and I developed, I think, one of the first ones 20 years ago for Indigenous post-secondary, and then UNBC took it on. And they've been training people, and I think they even have an annual conference now, Indigenous peer support that's university-based. And I always found, for me, that was my outreach. That got me my business. If I was working as a university counselor, my business came from the peer support students, because they were trained to identify and not to provide therapy, but how to refer and who to refer to. So people that would never come and see me would end up on my doorstep with the peer support person who brought them there to see me. So it's tremendous outreach, because students tend to talk to other students first. So that same model could be used, and I've used it actually in a high school in Whitehorse. There were no completed suicides the 3 years that I ran that, because it was specifically to address suicide prevention. So I think that's a really underutilized resource, but the universities are picking it up.
Yeah, quite aggressively.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. The next question is from Charlie Angus, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for this and your presence. I want to say that every time I see on Facebook one of the students from Treaty 9 announcing they're going to university, that's a huge victory. That's the future, and certainly many are going to Nipissing. I want to thank you for that work. And Mr. McCormick, I'm sure it's the same in your area. I'm interested in the issues of sustained funding. We had the example in the Attawapiskat housing crisis when the media came up for the first time to see the situation, and they were shocked and outraged to find there was this beautiful healing center. Well, what were those people in Attawapiskat doing with that beautiful healing center? Well, there was lots of money to build a healing center, and there was no money to run it, no money to staff it, no money to heat it. So both the feds and the province came, cut the ribbon, and then left town, and we had a beautiful healing center that sat there empty. It's the March Madness, where we go into schools that don't have math books, and they'll suddenly have state-of-the-art gear. And it's like, how'd you get that? Well, Indian Affairs called and said, got to spend the money within 3 weeks, buy something. My real deep concern out of this study is that Health Canada will announce in response that they're going to start a new program. And it'll be a carry-on of this hamster wheel of programs. How do we get to taking this money out of INAC and out of Health Canada and say, ITK has a plan for suicide prevention. Let ITK run it. NAN Territory has done the work. Let them do it, so that we can start to do modeling that actually responds to the needs of communities as opposed to ticking the boxes for the bureaucracies here.
Well, one of the issues of creating these sustainable funding profiles is the idea of finding Aboriginal organizations that will take this on, or creating them. The Aboriginal community has very little in the way of civil society. Most of the services that we access are accessed through some sort of political body. So if you go to a typical First Nations community, you will find, and you know this from, I'm sure from other presentations, that most of the employment will be from the band itself, that it's not unusual to have as many as 1 in 10 people run for public office. Whenever there's election, that you have everything, including businesses and journalists and programs, all embedded within the band government. So it's one way to manage things, but there's nowhere that's non-political for Aboriginal people to turn for services and supports, just like the rest of Canadians. We can go down to the Cancer Society if our parent has cancer, and we can access information, and we know that it's not a government service. It's there for the support of cancer and cancer survivors. So I think that what we need to do is regenerate what was decimated around the same time as the Aboriginal Healing Foundation closed. Most of the national Aboriginal organizations that were non-political, the National Aboriginal Health Organization, the First Nations Statistical Institute, all of these types of organizations that were managed by, governed by Aboriginal people, but were for direct service provision to Aboriginal communities that were apolitical. They were all done away with at the same time, often within a few months. So it represented a strata of Aboriginal society that was gone virtually overnight. So if we were to reestablish some type of program where Aboriginal people can govern their own services that do not have to have the blessing of political bodies. Certainly there'll be a liaison, but not everything has to be run. Not everything in the world is run through our MPs, and not every health service is run through our MPPs. Can you imagine a system where I had to go to my MPP in order to make sure I got adequate health service? I mean, it makes very little sense, but that is the world that is faced by most Aboriginal citizens.
Mr. McCormick, I want to talk to you about the historic transmission of trauma and what you've seen. I've seen in our communities with St. Anne's Residential School, Edmund Matata-Wabin says that there's a direct road from that trauma to the children killing themselves today. You can actually see the physical trauma in the faces of survivors. You start to identify where the heavy trauma was just from the physicalities, and that's intergenerational. The steps of trying to get people out on the land, the steps of trying to break that cycle has been really difficult, but it's deeply embedded now, intergenerational. From your experience, how do we start to find the alternatives, the healing paths that are community-driven, not outside-driven?
I think there has to be the resources there in terms of, if you're going on a healing journey, you have to gather your medicines, and whatever those resources are, be they traditional or a mixture or some Western psychology and some traditional healers, there has to be a safe place for it as well. I mean, you can't have people coming in offering these weekend workshops to rescue your inner child and let's all talk about our abuse and then leave. And that's often because there's so little money within communities, say $20,000 for mental health. What are we going to do with that? We can't hire a counselor, so let's get one of these people with their road shows to come in and open this all up. I'd say what you see that's transmitted intergenerationally is ways of coping that don't work very well. And one of them is disassociating, just not. Your mom went to residential school for 15 years and she didn't learn to identify and express emotions in a good way. Well, your kids aren't going to either, and you need to be able to break that. But you also need to do it in a safe place, and there has to be enough resources for it. And the safety that it's not going to be discontinued when the government feels like discontinuing it. So ownership of it. Yeah, I mean, I can't stress the safety enough, and I think that's one of the things the Healing Foundation tried to ensure, that the safety was there. I mean, there's so many things I could say to answer your question, but I see the card, so.
Afraid we're out of time there, Charlie. Thank you for the question and response. My apologies for the limitations of the time. We have time for one more question with this panel, and it's from Don Resnack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I worked for a time in northern Manitoba, and we dealt with the Aboriginal Healing Foundation through many of the community programs that existed at that time. The work that the foundation and the organizations did that were dealing with the foundation was amazing, and I'd be just curious to know if you had numbers from communities in terms of the successes and what they were doing. Would that exist, or has it all disappeared with the foundation going by the way?
We transferred our resources to Algoma University in Sault Ste. Marie, so we have a number of research resources that are there, and but all of the outcomes from those 1,300 odd community projects are also archived. So we have access to that. Strangely enough, we've never had a PhD student come up to us and say, "Geez, can I access all of that?" all of these data, this would be fantastic. But so it's there, and we also have published resources that legacy is continuing on through the Legacy of Hope Foundation. So we're trying to make those available.
Well, I was going to suggest that the analysts grab some of the data from from the work that some or at least some of the projects throughout the years that the foundation did, and the good work that I did see on the ground. And I was immensely upset when the previous government cut funding to that foundation, because it did such good work. I'm going to go off tangent and agree with my colleague from the NDP. Saying that, yeah, there are good things that can be done through organizations such as the Aboriginal Healing Foundation. It always doesn't have to come from government. Oftentimes, when the federal government does something, or one of the departments in terms of health, well-meaning, but done in stringent boxes, not done with the not done with the flexibility that's needed in a lot of our First Nation communities. And I say our First Nation communities because I'm one of I'm Ontario's only First Nation member of Parliament in Ontario. So I'm well aware of the problems in our communities, in the communities of Hunter Tutu, who's sitting here today, experience amazing rates of suicides and problems. And I've said this also Michael McLeod from the Northwest Territories, who've just had a rash of suicides over the last couple of weeks in his communities. I've said this a number of times at this committee, and I don't want my predecessors 10, 20, 100 years from now sitting at another committee studying Indigenous youth suicide. We need to do something now, and I believe that the work that that the Aboriginal Healing Foundation was doing was amazing work, because I saw the work. But again, and I've said this before, it's a two-part stage, or in my mind at least, and what a lot of people I've talked about, that we don't want to create this industry just on the misery in Indigenous communities. We want to end that misery somewhere. And I know that's what the foundation did so well, that they were doing programs built within the communities that was putting a stop, finally putting a stop to the feelings of despair and the problems that lead to other problems in the community and cost all of society so much. I see it in my community of Thunder Bay, where we have a lot of people coming from the north that aren't adjusting well to the city of Thunder Bay. We have colonialist attitudes amongst institutions. We see it with an investigation of the Thunder Bay Police Force right now. I really don't want to see this continuing, and the work that the foundation did was a starting point but not an ending point. Would you have any other recommendations other than restarting an organization like the Aboriginal Healing Foundation to help at least start ending these crises?
Well, you're probably going to get into the. I think the work of Michael Chandler and Lalonde in BC has probably come to this committee already. If not, it will. The notion that any community that develops more and more self-efficacy or self-government has its own agreements, has its own police force, all the way up to true self-governance. The higher you get on that sort of scale, the more resilient you become, and the youth in that community become more resilient to suicide. So the idea then is that if we can't create structures, and that's fine, then what we can do at the end of the day is make sure that we act within at least a policy framework that means that if we're going to act, we have to, at the end of the day, engender more empowerment. We have to engender more authority for people over their own lives, even if it's small things, even if it's small agreements or opportunities for youth to meet and speak and peer to peer and support each other. As long as it's supportive of empowerment, I think anything we do will be better than what we're doing.
I would add that in terms of empowerment, I don't know that necessarily governance. When I look at the experience of the Niska in BC, one of the first, I look at government of Nunavut. I think it was Nathan Oped that said, governance in New Zealand, in Greenland, and in Canada hasn't necessarily lowered our suicide rates. If what is reproduced in terms of governance is similar to the old government, people get pretty disappointed and disillusioned they had high expectations. So that's one variable. We still have to deal with a lot of unresolved grief and a lot of unresolved trauma. And I think that we need to address that. And what's being offered currently by FINI just isn't doing it. Hasn't worked.
15 seconds.
Well, thank you for your time coming here and presenting on this important subject for us. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That brings us to a close. Drs. DeGagne and McCormick, thank you very much for your testimony. It will be reflected in the record and ultimately in the report that we hope will be completed sometime early in the new year. And we look forward to sharing it when it's ready to be shared. Thanks again for your time. We'll have a brief suspend while we switch to the next panel. Thank you.
In just a few moments.
Okay, and I'll mute my mic until I'm addressed.
Please.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we're back. Thank you very much for the pause there. We are we doing 10 minutes each for these? Yes. So this second panel today is composed of 3 witnesses, and we're offering 10 minutes to each of them. The first witness is Gwen Healy, who's going to be joining us by video. Is it just strictly teleconference, no video today? And Gwen, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. I would like to learn how to properly pronounce the name of your organization, and to help me with that, perhaps you would introduce yourself, and then I'm happy to give you the floor for 10 minutes.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Dr. Gwen Healy, and I'm the Executive and Scientific Director of the Hawikiaki Health Research Center.
Okay, thank you very much, and please proceed. And I'll interrupt you when there's about a minute left, just to let you know, and then I'll remind you when we're at 10 minutes as well. Thank you, Dr. Healy.
Okay. Thank you to the Chair for the invitation to address the committee today. As I said, I'm Dr. Gwen Healy, and I was born and raised in Iqaluit Nunavut, and it's in this community that I continue to live and work. I'm the Executive and Scientific Director of the Iqaluit Health Research Center. I co-founded Iqaluit in 2006 with the late Andrew Tarak Sr. I'm also an Assistant Professor of Human Sciences at the Northern Ontario School of Medicine. My formal training is in epidemiology and public health. Our center is an independent, nonprofit community research center. We exist to answer the health questions of our communities. This may take the form of community-based research or territorial and systems-level research or circumpolar international projects across the Arctic. We develop evidence-based interventions, conduct surveys, and collect narratives, and explore community-identified health questions. We are contributing to scholarship and academia by sharing our evidence nationally and internationally, and by developing and sharing health research approaches that are developed from an Inuit epistemology. Health research studies are usually developed from a deficit-based model. There is an issue, a medicine or treatment is created and applied, and then presumably an individual gets better. However, this is not the only way to examine a topic, and this method often treats contextual information as confounding or biased, and occasionally it's ignored altogether. However, sometimes the contextual information can be the essence of the issue. We know that the context of Nunavut's suicide crisis is extremely important, but rarely openly discussed. There is a marked difference between Canada and Nunavut when it comes to social determinants of health, such as poverty, housing, and education. From the Nunavut portion of the Inuit Health Survey, we know that 11% of adult respondents were verbally abused as children, that 31% of adults reported experiencing severe physical abuse in childhood, 52% of women and 22% of men reported experiencing severe sexual abuse in childhood. 43% reported feeling depressed some or a little of the time, and 9% all or most of the time. And feelings of depression were more commonly reported among women and youth. 48% of respondents reported having thought seriously about suicide, and 29% of respondents reported a non-fatal suicide attempt in their lives. These are heartbreaking statistics, and the context of this information is extremely important. Nunavut settlement history is relatively new compared to other Indigenous communities in Canada. The federal settlement program, the tuberculosis outbreak, the dog slaughter, and the residential school system events all occurred in roughly the same time period in the 1950s and 60s. At this time, families were severed, children were taken away from their parents, and a complex series of events unfolded which had an immediate and long-lasting impact on Inuit society. What is particularly damaging about this series of events is the fact that Inuit society is relational, founded on a system of kinship relations. These relations form the basis of a unique attachment philosophy. When parents were separated from their children during the settlement and separation events, the development of family attachments was disrupted, threatening the foundation of Inuit kinship society, ways of knowing, language, transfer of skills, and knowledge about wellness and what one needs to be well. It severed the very threads that wove the fabric of many families together. The deficits are important to understand, but so are the strengths. Rather than a purely deficit-based model, at Iqaluit, we often apply a strengths-based model to our work. We know we have certain strengths in our communities and our way of life. We know that certain aspects of our lives are very good as a result of celebrating and building on these strengths. How can we help others to tap into their strengths and ensure our communities are well now and for future generations? Between 2006 and 2008, we held a series of public engagement sessions across Nunavut to identify health priorities from the perspective of community members. Mental health and wellness of our communities was the most important priority, and our board focused on the mental health and wellness of children and youth in particular after these consultations. At that time, we knew there was a dearth of programs or supports for children or youth or their parents in Nunavut, but we knew what our strengths were. Our relationship with the land is a strength, our connections and relationships with each other, our willingness and readiness to help each other, our arts and music and stories, our absolute undying love for our children are all our collective strengths and core societal values. From this place, we set out to design a program to help young people realize these strengths in themselves. Our belief was that from this position, we could, as a community, contribute to the building of such strengths in our youth to help them be well, especially if their home environment included trauma or neglect, or for any other reason they were not learning about these strengths at home. Through this pathway, we believe we can prevent death by suicide. This program would be something that any community member could deliver if they also saw these strengths in themselves. We worked with elders, youth, parents, youth workers, and community members from across Nunavut to develop the content for the program, which one of the parents named Makimautiksa. This means building a foundation within oneself. The program was designed to take place on the land and in the community. We spent the next 4 years piloting and evaluating the program in Nunavut. The model for Makimautiksa comes from Inuit perspectives on what it means for a young person to be well as the Western scientific literature. For example, we know from neuroscience literature that in an adolescent's developing brain, a very important time to develop coping skills is between the ages of 9 and 12 years. By focusing on this age group, there's a greater likelihood of retention. Hopefully, these skills can be retained during tough life events and transitions that lie ahead in the teen and early adulthood years. The model for Makimautiksa is developed around 8 core concepts, or foundational pillars. We envision them as rocks in a tent ring, which provide the stabilization for a tent or hammock. The first concept is the strengthening of coping skills. The second is inokatigitiaunuk, which is being respectful of others and building healthy and supportive relationships. The third is timiga, my body, promoting awareness of the body, movement, and nutrition. The fourth is pananuk, which is crafting and exploring creativity. The fifth is Nunalivut, our community, which is about fostering personal and community wellness. Sakatayuk is the sixth concept, which is the distant horizon and is about self-discovery and future planning. The seventh is understanding informed choices, substance use, and peer pressure. And the eighth concept is Avatitinikamatyaunuk, to be stewards of the land and connecting knowledge and skills with experience on the land. From our research findings, as we evaluated the program, we found that activities fostered physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness and supported a holistic perspective among the youth. Campers reported feeling more happy, cheerful, and energetic, and a decrease in feeling sad or miserable, and that they felt more comfortable expressing themselves. Lessons that they were glad to have learned included being physically active, to have respect for themselves, the importance of going on the land to Inuit culture and values, self-empowerment skills, and about healthy relationships. 6 months after the program, one youth reported saying, "I am smart," and others reported feelings of confidence in their ability to complete tasks, like going to school on time, and were more aware of problems that they now had control over. They reported realizing that they were capable of helping others and offering advice. Facilitators felt youth were more confident after attending Makimautiksa, and that the land component was vital for skill building and for revitalizing the importance of stewardship for the land among youth. Parents also described that their children had more confidence. After the conclusion of the funding we had received to develop Makimautiksa, we tried for 2 years to find more funding to sustain ongoing delivery and expansion. We submitted a number of proposals to the territorial government in particular, and nothing came through, so the project stagnated. This year, we have received 6 months of funding from the government of Nunavut to train new facilitators and support the delivery of Makimautiksa as an after-school program, which will culminate in a land camp in the late winter and early spring. But we continue to struggle to find opportunities for sustainability and scale-up. Inuit societal values and pathways to wellness are key to moving forward. Rebuilding and strengthening the relational aspects of society, fostering the relationships between youth, their families, their communities, the land and the spirit world, and the ancestors will take time, but is essential. We are thinking about the 7 generations to come. 7 people in my life have died by suicide. This issue affects all of us. I have young children, and when I look at them, I think it's unacceptable that our children should have to grieve the way we grieve for the loss of our peers, our loved ones, and our fellow community members. Our generation must do something about this. It's imperative that we act. I believe we know many of the pathways forward, and what we need are sustained supports, leadership, and opportunities to act on them. And thank you for your time. That's the end of my statement.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Healy. Very much appreciated. We're going to not go to questions now. We're going to move right on to the next statements, and then we'll come back and do questions all at once. So I hope you're able to stay on the line with us.
Yes, I'll just mute my mic on my end.
Okay, thank you very much. The next witness is Jacob Gerhard. Jacob?
Jacob.
Jacob, okay, I beg your pardon. Executive Director of Ilisaksivik, and we could look for some teaching on the right pronunciation of that as well.
Ilisaksivik.
Ilisaksivik. Thank you very much, and please have the floor for 10 minutes.
All right, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, on behalf of Ilisaksivik's Board of Directors and staff, thank you for this invitation to appear before you today for this important discussion. My name is Jacob Gerhard, and I'm Executive Director of Ilisaksivik Society. Ilisaksivik was established in 1997 by community members in Clyde River, a community of about 1,000 people on the northeast coast of Baffin Island. Ilisaksivik was founded because the community was not happy with the existing mental health and social services and other wellness-related programs that were provided by the government. These services were not culturally relevant, they were not provided in Inuktitut, and they did not reflect Inuit values. In many instances throughout Nunavut, this is still the case today. Ilisaksivik is a true grassroots community-based Inuit organization. It is a Canadian registered charity and a Nunavut registered society. At Ilisaksivik, our mission is to encourage and support community wellness by providing safe spaces, resources, and programming that empower families and individuals to find healing and develop their strengths. Ilisaksivik was started by just a few people, but it has grown until today and strengthened over the years. Today, we are the largest employer in our community with over 50 people in part-time and full-time positions. We're also the first employer for many community members, and we offer employment training in many types of job skills. In addition to our wellness center, we operate the Itak Heritage and Research Center, which also houses a digital media center. Last year, we opened a hotel where profits go to support Ilisaksivik, one of the few examples of social entrepreneurship in Nunavut. This last point is important, and I want to highlight it here. Ilisaksivik has branched into social entrepreneurship because it needs to find ways to mitigate a serious funding struggle. Despite winning national awards for our work, including from the Prime Minister of Canada, and being held up as a positive example of quality care closer to home by different government and Inuit organizations, nobody has stepped up to ensure our financial security. We survive project to project, year to year. We are always at risk of not securing the resources we need. So while I tell you about the successes of our organization over the next few minutes, success is thanks to the dedication and hard work of our board and our staff and our community. You must understand that our funding security is a critical issue. We are constantly addressing and an ongoing risk to our existence. To fulfill our mission of supporting community wellness, we provide a wide range of programs. Last year, we offered over 80 programs. Our programs support all of our community members, from pregnant women to children to teens, families, and elders. We provide programs related to education, culture, language, nutrition, land skills, health, wellness, and more. I could not mention all of our programs, it would take too much time, but just to give you a few examples, we offer preschool parents and tots, prenatal nutrition, land-based healing, cultural and hunting programs, youth drop-in, parenting programs, diabetes prevention, Inuktitut literacy, etc. Land-based programs are one of the most important and successful programs we offer. We offer a variety of land-based programs, including elder youth camps and hunter training programs for youth. Local youth regularly have the opportunity to learn to hunt, fish, and practice on-the-land skills through our programming. They share their catch with the community, and these programs contribute to food security by providing fresh meat to households and also passing knowledge and experience on to the next generation of hunters. Just last month, we held a 3-week-long summer land program where over 50 community members camped on the land and participated in facilitated cultural and healing activities. Our land programs are held in all seasons for all ages, and everyone is welcome. There is one other key area of Ilisaksivik services that I'd like to highlight for you today, and it is our counseling services. Providing culturally relevant counseling and counselor training grounded in Inuit values and knowledge and provided in Inuktitut for Inuit by Inuit is one of our key achievements. All across Nunavut, Inuit struggle to access appropriate mental health, counseling, and social services. In most cases, the mental health services available to Inuit are from fly-in southern-based counselors and social workers who have minimal to no knowledge and experience with Inuit culture, do not speak Inuktitut, and do not understand the historical and cultural context of where they are working. Inuit have always had counselors, those people who were recognized as trusted and respected people who had life experience that others could talk to when they needed to talk. There are these recognized people in all of our communities. At Ilisaqsivik, we decided that we needed to organize and empower these community-based counselors. Our local counselors wanted more training, but there were no training programs available to them. All available training was in English, based on Southern-style counseling and based on Southern approaches and values. So we built our own counselor training program at Ilisaqsivik called Our Life's Journey, the Inuit Counselors Training and Mentorship Program. The program started in 2007, and since then we have grown tremendously in our counselor training. We offer a one-year program that has 5 modules to be completed. The program offers counseling and addictions training to people working in the health and social service fields in Inuit communities. The training is based on Inuit knowledge and values, combined with useful approaches from many other sources, and is delivered in Inuktitut. Training is our priority. Training Inuit is our priority. We make exceptions for other frontline workers. Training Inuit is our priority, but we also make exception for other frontline non-Inuit workers. We are inclusive. We want to collaborate with our mental health professionals, but we only provide training in Inuktitut and in Inuit way. Since 2007, over 110 people have participated in our training. The age of participants has ranged from 20 to 83 years old. To date, we have had participants from all 13 Qikiqtani communities and also from several communities in the Kivalliq and Kitikmeot regions. In 2016, our counselor training program became accredited by the Indigenous Certification Board of Canada, and as of now, we have 38 graduates who have completed our full program. The result of our counselor training program is a network of professional counselors with specialized Inuit-appropriate training available to clients in Inuktitut. Ilisaqsivik counselors know the language, they know the culture, and they know what clients need. At Ilisaqsivik, as part of this program, we have a mobile trauma team. In the past, if there was a traumatic event in a community, Southern-based workers would be flown in. Now communities are calling Ilisaqsivik to send assistance. We are responding with trained counselors across Baffin. We can quickly send people to communities and to families for help, or to help. Counselors who understand the context, the culture, and the people they're helping in their own language. Based on our experience, we feel strongly that there should be mandatory training for any caregiver working in Nunavut. Training that educates them about Inuit culture and history. But that is only the beginning. The GN, the Government of Nunavut, should hire more graduates from the Inuit Counselors Training and Mentorship Program and put these people in positions to help Inuit communities and families. They should also invest in programs like this to train more Inuit counselors and caregivers and provide more culturally relevant services. We are proud of our work at Ilisaqsivik, and we wish more communities could have centers like Ilisaqsivik. Ilisaqsivik is very unique in Nunavut. It is run by Inuit for Inuit. It is truly community-based. We are exceptionally strong, even though we struggle with funding and with recognition for Inuit ways. I am grateful for the opportunity to share our experience with this committee and truly believe that the only way to build stronger, more resilient, and healthier communities is by all of us working together, listening to and respecting one another. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jacob. Much appreciated. Pleased to welcome now Margot Greenwood, Dr. Greenwood, from the National Collaborating Center for Aboriginal Health. 10 minutes, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'd like to begin by thanking the organizers for inviting me, the committee for inviting me. It's a real privilege to be here, and as you can probably tell, it's the first time I've ever been here, so I'll do my best. I actually prepared some slides for you, but then quickly realized that you don't have those here. So I'm going to do my best to talk from them. So if I sound a little disconnected, please forgive me. I'm a Cree from Treaty 6 in central Alberta, or Treaty 6 area. But I've lived most of my life in northern British Columbia, in Prince George, and that's where the National Collaborating Centre for Aboriginal Health is located at the University of Northern British Columbia in Prince George. So most of my adult life has been in the north. My children were born and raised in the north, so we have some sense, and not the far north as you talk about it, Jake and Gwen, but in the northern part of the province. The National Collaborating Centre is a knowledge translation centre, so what I've prepared for you today is just 5 slides that contain key elements or key points, if you will, taken from the literature. As I listened to Mike and Rod and Jake and Gwen, they've already spoken to a number of the points I have. So I'm affirming them, I guess, as I present this to you. The first slide I had, I really wanted to start by looking at what are the principles of some of the best practices that we're hearing about. What are those underlying elements that are common to them? And I heard them, many of them already. One of the first ones that we think about and talk about is that any practice, program, policy needs to be anchored in Indigenous knowledges and the right to self-determination. So I heard people talking about self-governance, but self-determination is not the same as self-governance, and I think that's an important distinction, and I think one leads to the other. But it's really important that we have the right to determine our own health and well-being, the right to determine our children's health and well-being in this country. Another element of practice or policy is that they are rooted in the land, in Indigenous cultures, in their language, their values, their beliefs. We heard examples of that already today. The concept of holistic or holism. We talk a lot about that. That is a concept anchored in, and I dare say, Indigenous spirituality. It's deeply rooted in the understanding, and as I think in other cultures as well, but a deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all beings, that we are connected to the land. And I think that's really important. And we often hear about holistic as talking about, especially when we're talking about children's development, we often hear about the developmental domains, the physical, the social, emotional, cognitive, spiritual, cultural. We hear that. And we also talk about that within the context of family and community. So these don't happen independent, but they're interrelated, and they are situated within the context of family and community. And I'm going to talk more about that a little bit later. I heard lots of the presenters talk about programs, practices that are locally initiated and owned and accountable. And I think that's a really important word, is accountability. Not just accountability to funders but accountability to the people we serve and to ourselves and to our communities. I think those are really important concepts, and that they're determined by community, and what that looks like is determined by them. Many of these practices were best practices were seen to be population-based, so we're not just talking about individuals. And I think I've made that point. The other point that came out in the literature is strengths-based. I think that's really important in any issue. How do we build on the existing strengths that we have? We have strengths that we probably haven't even tapped into yet. And how do we bring those together? And this is a
Dr.
favorite.
Greenwood, I just wanted to check in on time with you to let you know that we're just over half time, and I'm getting some signals from you that you may.
Okay.
You maybe,
I'll get going
yeah, you've got more to get through.
I can talk on and on. Okay. Well, I think these are probably some really important points anyway. But I think strengths-based is a really important piece. And I think that when we're talking about cultures and we're talking about knowledges, we're talking about different systems of knowledge. And so how do we draw from those systems in partnerships and collaborations to realize the kinds of things that we need to do to move forward together to addressing a lot of these social challenges that we're facing? I think in this, the literature also talks about protective factors, ensuring individual identity and personal skills, engagement of youth in the strategies that are being developed for them or with them, should be with them, and really thinking about intersectoral collaborations, that it isn't just one, doesn't just sit in health, or it doesn't just sit in education, that there's multiple players here, and that it needs to be intersectoral solutions. I'm going to skip, because I've probably 3 minutes left now. I'm going to talk to my last slide, and I had a number of others in here. One, I will say some of the protective factors, and I think it was Rod and Mike mentioned about the seminal work of Chandler and Lalonde, where they looked at communities that were more self-determining, and that indeed those communities had significant, if any, rates of youth suicide. So that's a seminal piece of work in this country, in my opinion. And there are many others, so I won't go. One of the place I do want to go is right to my last slide, and what that, I wish you could see it. It's a graphic, but maybe you'll be able to see it in your mind. So in the center, it's nested circles, and in the center we really have restoring and revitalizing individuals and families, so that there's the healing and all the programs that we heard about. All of those are absolutely essential to the healing of individuals and families, and those constitute the community. Sitting within that, though, that circle is nested within systems and structures. And those systems and structures need to be enabling those direct services to individuals and families. They need to be enabling those to happen. So if we have lack of funding, or we have policy that won't allow certain things, then we're not enabling those good practices that community will develop. And I think that's really important. So I see those as really the enablers of all of this. And when I've been in a lot of these discussions, I don't hear us talk about that. It's hard. It's not easy to make those changes. But I think if we're going to see these practices at the community level, and we've heard about sustainability and all of that, we need to be looking and moving simultaneously. You're very gentle with that. But we need to be moving simultaneously at multiple levels to ensure that what's happening at that one-on-one level will be successful. So I'm going to stop there. I made it through 2 slides. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, and I will let you know that we do have 1 or 2 copies of your slides here and your notes, and we will duplicate them and distribute them to the committee. But
there's a larger document that goes.
We have that as well. We'll distribute both. Yeah, and so thank you, Gwen, Jacob, and Margot, for that. And Jacob, I wanted to mention that. We had hoped, of course, to see you in Iqaluit 2 weeks ago at our public hearing, but I understand the flights didn't allow it. So we're very, very grateful that you were able to fly in today.
Thank you. It would have been even better, because then it wouldn't have been me. It would have been our chair and one of our counselors. Yeah. So sorry. I apologize that it had to be me this time.
That's okay. We're happy to have you. But I can tell you, just about every other guest that we had at our panel mentioned your work. So it's really great to have you. So thank you all. So we're going to move right into questions. We have time for a few questions anyway. And they're 7-minute questions. And the first question is from Don Rusnak, please.
Thank you for your presentation, even though we probably do have the technology to get it up on the board, but we didn't today, so I apologize for that. Again, we're hearing over and over again the problem with funds to do the work, the great work, as I'm hearing that you guys are doing in the community. And I'm going to take an analyst question here because I thought it was exactly what I was thinking in terms of testimony that was heard at the public hearing in Iqaluit. Witness noted that federal funding program criteria was too narrow for some Inuit-specific initiatives. When program funding did arrive partway through the fiscal year, it only left 20 weeks to deliver the program. A representative from Leave Out Violence Nova Scotia stated that she does not apply for federal funding as the funding arrives too late in the year and only provides very short-term funding, which my understanding is they can do very little with. They'll either have to return it back or, in this case, she doesn't apply for it in most cases. So it was recommended that funding be extended for multi-year initiatives. The first question is how responsive are federal program criteria to your community-based initiatives right now, in the past, and what would be your recommendation for future?
For me?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I would start by saying, first of all, the short-term funding problem is not, like, the federal government doesn't need to own that. It's across the board. It's with all funders, or a lot of the funders, territorial funders, even non-governmental funders. There's this tendency to fund short-term. And there's also this, like, funders want to fund always, like, the new project, something that's never been done before. Like, they don't want to fund often this ongoing project that we've been doing for 10 years and works. They want to fund a new part of that. So that's another part of that problem. We love federal funding. We apply for it all the time, and we receive federal funding. We're funded right now by Health Canada. We're one of the Indian residential school programs. We represent Baffin Island for that program, and that funding partially funds the counselor training program that I'm talking about. It's awesome. I wish it were for more than 1 year at a time. We have to apply for it every year, and every year they say we don't know if we're going to get it next year. Maybe we're going to get it next year. We'll tell you later if we're going to get it, and then we get that application, and so it makes my job really difficult. Instead of, like, figuring out how we're going to make our program better, I'm scrambling around trying to figure out if we're going to be funded next year. And our counselors also have a really difficult time because they're asking me all the time, am I working here next year, or do I need to start looking for another job, right? It makes it so, et cetera. I won't go down the rabbit hole, but and we don't have problems with, if the funding's too narrow, or the criteria is too narrow, I can't think of a specific example of that. When it stopped us, I think that we have maybe a higher capacity in our organization to write proposals. So I would only be able to speak for our organization on that. But I think sometimes it might be too narrow, and sometimes it might be too bureaucratic, right, to get through that. Sometimes we have to hire consultants to help us walk through the application process.
So I apologize, Gwen. You do have a sign here, and I hope you're still on the phone, but there's an empty chair there, and I would like you to answer or take a stab at the same question. In terms of funding coming from funders, can you identify a problem for us? So hopefully at the federal level, we can make a recommendation to government to fix that. And are there positives that you see? And I don't know if you heard the previous presentation from the other two gentlemen who were talking about the Aboriginal Healing Foundation. Would an organization like that perhaps didn't have as rigorous of funding models or categories be beneficial to organizations like yours?
So that was directed at me, just to be clear, because I can't see.
Yeah, sorry, the empty chair.
Yes. Yes. Okay, I'm still here, and our organization has the same challenge as Ely Sukstavik in that we are also only project-based funded, so we don't have core funding, although we try continuously to find it. And so we also rely on proposal-driven funding. And we have been very fortunate. Like, we also love federal funding. We've been very fortunate in being able to apply for and receive multi-year funding through the Public Health Agency, but it's usually through sort of a research or innovation-focused initiative. And Mucky Moutik's a good example of this, where we received a 5-year grant to develop and pilot and implement the program. But then when we finished that and we had this wonderful program, it was impossible to try and find the funding to actually fund the program delivery now that the innovation part had been concluded. So that part has been a challenge, and trying to navigate the different streams of funding through Health Canada or the Public Health Agency. We got kind of shimmied to different departments, and then it ended up just kind of being no one's responsibility to help us find the right pathway. So that was a challenge on our end. But when we do get that multi-year funding, it's perfect and it's great and it works really well. And in terms of being able to work with the different departments, that all is very smooth. And so we do appreciate that. And then in terms of the other question was about narrow criteria. And I don't think I can comment on that, where in my experience, the criteria, they've been broad enough, I think, to capture a wide variety of proposals. And in our experience, we haven't had that problem necessarily.
Thanks,
and then
Dr.
I believe the other question was...
We're just out of time there. I'm sorry to interrupt you there. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. Okay.
That's okay. The next question, and we only have time for 2 more questions, I'm afraid, is from David Yurdiga.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank Dr. Healy and Jacob and Marco for joining us here today. Your input is very valuable, and it'll be an important part of our report. One of the concerns we heard in our committee trip to Northern Quebec and Nunavut was the constant turnover of mental health professionals. And what challenges do the youth experience with this constant turnover? And I'd like to hear from all the witnesses, if possible.
I'll start. It's a huge challenge. So somebody comes into the community, it takes them, well, they might come in on a contract that's like 6 weeks long or something. Or they might come in on a contract that's 2 weeks long. They fly in, they spend most of their time trying to figure out where they are. Flying into a community on Baffin Island is not like, flying or, driving down the road. It's different. It's really different. The kinds of trauma that you're going to see and hear about, because you're in a small community and there's a lot of trauma. We get mental health workers that leave. They fly in and they get traumatized and they leave. If you're a client, and this happens all the time, people will come over to our office and they'll complain about the mental health worker that just flew in, and they'll say things like, I went in there and I had to spend the first 30 minutes explaining to them what Inuit history and residential school and what is the dog slaughter and how all this stuff is impacted. I even had to tell them why it's super expensive to live up here. I couldn't speak in Inuktitut, and the person that was the mental health worker wanted to bring in for a translator is related to me or is my ex-boyfriend, or it's a small community. There's 1,000 people. If you're a fly-in mental health worker, it's tough. And it's not fair for the clients, because I would go as far as to say is it's not ethical for a mental health worker to just fly in and pretend like they're counseling when they don't speak the language, when they are not sure the capacity of their interpreter, and when they don't really, or the capacity or how the interpreter is even related to the situation they're talking about, and they don't know enough about the community to know the basic sort of history. I had one person recently, a client recently, say that they felt like they should have gotten paid to provide the mental health worker with an orientation to the north. And they didn't feel like they got anything out of it. And then I'll finish. But then what happens is that mental health worker leaves. So they're there for 6 weeks, and you finally work to sort of to trust them. And you're working on a plan, and maybe you're going to go for residential treatment somewhere or something, and then someone else comes in and you start all over.
Margot or Gwen, did you want to weigh in?
Good night, Gwen.
Sorry, was Margot going to speak?
No, go ahead, Gwen.
Okay. I was just going to add on, I agree completely with what Jake said. It's unethical to consider 4 to 6 week contract counselors as providing a service, because they aren't, and they're coming in without any orientation. So that is a significant challenge in the system as it currently exists. And the other piece I would add is that it's also at the management level. So it's not just on the front line, it's also within the higher up in the department or in the division. The entire complement of the mental health unit here in Iqaluit changed over in the last 6 months, and they're all new people. So, it's just this constant rebuilding of connections and relationships and explaining what's happening. It's a challenge for sure.
Gwen, do you have anything, or I can ask my next question? Or
I can just add a very small anecdote from northern British Columbia. We don't live in the far north, but we certainly have challenges with turnover. And the challenge, and I totally agree with what Jake and Gwen have said, that the challenge of workers coming in who really don't, or practitioners coming that don't know the context in which they're stepping into. So one of the things that we've done, we have small groups of communities across the upper 2/3 of British Columbia that they're almost like in traditional groupings, and we engage with them as Northern Health Authority. I also work with them. And one of the questions we asked them as we prepared for these folks coming into community, if I was a new health practitioner coming to your community, what would you want me to know? And so we've supported them, Northern Health has supported them in developing resources, and we've got all kinds of resources now, DVDs, elder speaking, all the kinds of teaching materials to start to mitigate some of that in and out stuff and give them some background before they actually get there.
Well, thank you. So what type of resources do we require to ensure that we have a longer-term solution? We're looking at, the 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever. It's not working. So what can we do to get somebody to commit to the community for a longer period than 6 months? Is there anything that can be done, or this is a reality we have to deal with?
Briefly, if you can, just 1 minute remaining, I'm afraid.
Support counselor training programs like the one that I described that we're running that will train community members to be counselors. Then you don't have to worry about flying anyone in and out. That's the first. The second is if we are flying people in and there are reasons to fly people in, connect them to counselors, local counselors, and be colleagues, be equal, be peers. Don't treat them like, oh, I have a PhD and whatever, and therefore I'm like on a higher level. And no, everyone as a counselor needs to work together. And that way, if that counselor comes and leaves, the one that's a fly in, fly out, there's still people in the community that have a relationship to that person that's flying in and out, and they can continue to work with clients.
Thank you.
I think we're out of time there. The final question is from Charlie Angus, please.
Thank you. This has been absolutely fascinating, and I'm not going to repeat the questions that have really laid out the stuff of what it's like on the ground. I think we've heard it very clearly. Ms. Greenwood, I want to go a bit back in terms, I was really struck by your comments about the effects where you have communities that are self-determining. The very first time I flew into Saskatchewan, a woman came up to me and said to me, "How would you like to raise your child in a prisoner of war camp?" And I looked around, and I saw it in a different light. I mention that because Alan Taramura, who's the president of the Royal Architecture Society, called me, and he wanted to come to Saskatchewan because his mother was raised in a Japanese prisoner of war camp, and his mother saw a picture of Saskatchewan and said, "That's where I grew up." And so we toured Saskatchewan, and what he pointed out as an architecture specialist, he said, there's absolutely nothing in this community that allows for the community to make their own decision. This is a holding camp. It was designed as a holding camp. When they signed Treaty 9, they put everybody in holding camps. Everything from the architecture to the community layout, to the decisions, to the education, everything is decided by bureaucrats in Ottawa. Businesses that try and get off the ground are decided by bureaucrats in Ottawa. So you have communities that have no ability for the leaders and the adults to take control. It's all on the whim of somebody, on somebody's desk someplace. That sense of hopelessness is something we don't often think about. Then you add the trauma of the residential schools, you add the trauma of the poverty and the black mold in the houses, but the overall psychological damage of treating these communities as though they're holding camps. I'd like to ask what you meant in terms of the idea of communities, of the ability to be self-determining and good health outcomes.
I guess when I think about that from multiple levels. I think there is some things that happen at the individual levels. I think there's things that happen at community level. I can't help thinking of on September 18th, there was an article in Maclean's that talked about Bella Bella and youth suicide in Bella Bella, and how the fellow's name was Jorgensen, and he came from Ontario, and he went to Bella Bella, which is a northern community in British Columbia, and he went there to try to make sure that students were going to school, young people were going to school. But it turned into much more than that. And it turned into the young people going with him out on the land, the reconnection to the land, the identity. Then it started to spread to the families. Then it started to spread to economic development. And it's a really great article if you can get it. It's online too. But, you know, I see hope there. I see that it didn't take a huge, big piece, but it took someone to recognize a small piece and grew it. And when I read stories like that, I'm hopeful. One of the other things that we've put a lot of energy into is the arts. Sometimes when you look at architecture, and sometimes when words don't convey what need to be said, the arts do. And I've seen a number of programs around youth suicide and child development that focus on the land, but they also focus on the arts. How do you transform your reality? And it may be local artists who do that, who take some of those dismal scenes and change them. I think it's things like that, and supporting the kinds of programs that Jake has been talking about. I think that's what gives us hope. And you're right. We can fall into a pit where there is no hope. And that is the question. How do we get it back? How do we find the pathways out of that? I don't think there's a singular path, but I think I would believe in the community, because there was health there. And there will be health again. And that's what I mean by strengths. And finding those, and the avenues that are innovative aren't just a government-funded program, because community will know that. Then they'll use those pieces to build. And I think it's incumbent on us to put the structures and the systems in place that enable that kind of revitalization.
Thank you.
Well, that brings us to the end then of the meeting today. I want to thank Gwen and Jacob and Margot and all the witnesses, in fact, that preceded you as well, for the thoughtfulness and richness of your remarks. It's going to be a great help to our path forward here. Thank you so much. I have a motion to adjourn. We're adjourned. Thank you.